Hello, welcome back to 40 Days with the Fathers. We're on day 27, carrying on with Athanasius' Life of Anthony, looking at chapters 61 to 70 today. Here we begin with a couple more examples of the healing miracles which were worked through Anthony, which carry over from yesterday's chapters. Many people would travel far and wide to hear and see from Anthony, to receive prayer for sickness or from freedom from demons. But he used to ask that no one should wonder at him for this, but should rather marvel at the Lord for having granted us men to know him as far as our powers extended. Two examples are given of demonic possession. The first was when Anthony was asked to visit some monks on a boat. On arriving, there was a stench so bad in that place that Anthony said it was unusual and not natural. The people on board said it was due to the cargo of meat. As Anthony preached, a boy in the crowd yelled out, and Anthony rebuked the demon in him, setting the boy free with it. And when with it, the stench left. The other time was about an official who had been possessed so badly that he would not know where he went and ate his own excrement. The man somehow ended up by Anthony one day, so he sat and prayed with him all night until the demon finally let go and left with a violent outburst. Athanasius breaks here to make a note that many monks had related with the greatest agreement and unanimity that many other such things like this were done through Anthony, and that these things recalled here were like highlights to his life story. So he was a busy man doing many miracles, it sounds like. So what we see in this biography is just sort of like the tip of the iceberg, I guess. Anthony's vision about forgiveness of sins. Athanasius relates now the time when Anthony was praying and about to go and eat. On standing up, he suddenly found himself in the spirit and in what we probably call an out-of-body experience in today's language. Suddenly, he was taken up into the air by certain ones, as it says, which I assume means to be angels, because he is then opposed by a certain bitter and terrible beings, which would seem to describe something like demons. They try to stop his passage by accusing him of his sins, but the ones accompanying Anthony tell him that the Lord has wiped out the sins from his birth, but that only since the time he became a monk they can accuse him. They failed and Anthony was allowed to pass. Suddenly Anthony found himself back in his body as before, and was astonished at what mighty opponents our wrestling is against, and recalled what Paul taught in his epistles about our battles being against the ruler and power of the air. That's Ephesians 2 verse 2 if you're wondering. So he taught all the more passionately about the need to put on the whole armour of God and for living right before God, so that the enemy may not have anything evil to say against us. I found that bit quite interesting when I first read it, and even now reading it again. His whole vision and that the point that all our sins were wiped clean from our birth up until the moment we convert, but only from then on, if we commit sins again, does the evil one actually have any say against us, which I thought was quite interesting. Anthony's vision on the passing of souls. At another time, when Anthony was praying at night, after a discussion with some people about what happens to the soul after death, he heard a voice from above telling him to go outside and look up. On going, he saw a giant being going up as tall as the clouds, and people ascending upwards through the clouds. Some of the people were being hindered, while others flew by without issue. He had his mind open to understand what he was seeing. It was explained that the giant was the enemy stopping those souls from heading to heaven, who were accountable to the devil, but those who belonged to God could pass by without issue. Anthony against heretics and heresy such as Arianism. When schisms and heresies arose, such as the Meletian schismatics or the Manichaean heretics, I hope I'm saying those right, Anthony would have no part of it, nor would even meet with them except to try and convert them to the truth. And before I go on, I'll read the little footnotes to explain what they are. So the Meletian comes from Meletius, a bishop of Lycopol. All these words I can't say. Lycopol, somewhere in Egypt. And he was removed from his office around 306 AD for sacrificing to idols, amongst other things. And then Manichaeism is a religion founded in the latter half of the 3rd century by a Persian named Mani. It's a form of religious dualism mixing together with various aspects of other religions, such as Zoroastrian dualism, Babylonian folklore, Buddhist ethics, and superficial Christian elements. So a whole mishmash, pick and mix of everything you like. So anyway, these guys came along. Anthony had no part of it, except to try and convert them. He also despised the Arians and their heresy, and warned that none should go near them nor hold their belief. Also, again, if you're not familiar with Arianism, that's the one that denies the deity of Christ and says that he's not actually God. He's a being, divine being like God, but not of God, if that makes sense. The famous thing in the Arians is basically that Jesus was a created being. Even though he's divine, he's not of the same substance and divinity of the Father, so therefore he is kind of like a lesser God, which is the whole point of what the Nicene Creed and that Council of Nicaea was about, to nail down that, which was not long after this time. This was, I guess, around 306-ish, the part we're reading now. The Council of Nicaea was 325, so it's heading up to that point where it all sort of comes to a head against the Arians. So you can see that even here, before the council convened, Anthony's preaching against Arianism and already sees it as an error. So anyway, he warned people not to go anywhere near the Arians, and at one point certain madmen, as he said, who were Arians, came to Anthony so that he could learn more about their doctrine. But he drove them away, saying that their words were worse than the poison of serpents, when he understood more about what they taught. After this, some more Arians went about and lied, saying Anthony agreed with their doctrine. On hearing this, all of the bishops and other brethren summoned Anthony to Alexandria to be questioned about it. He denounced the heresy as something antichrist, and defended the divinity of Christ, saying, "The Son of God was not a created being, neither had he come into being from non-existence, but that he was eternal word and wisdom of the essence of the Father. And therefore it was impious to say there was a time when he was not, for the Word was always coexistent with the Father. Wherefore, have no fellowship with the most impious Arians, for there is no communion between light and darkness." So that little quote there gives you a brief summary of what the Arians were teaching. And is basically the main point of the Council of Nicaea as well. So he goes on to teach that they, and anyone who denies Christ's divinity and says that he's a created being, are no better than the heathen, since they worship that which is created, rather than the Creator, the Lord of all, by whom all things came into being, with those things which were originated. On hearing that Anthony had denounced the Arians, the city rejoiced, and even the Greeks and their temple priests came to see Anthony speak. And in that time many people were healed and set free from the demons. And as many as became Christians in as many became Christians in those few days as one would have seen in a year. So a lot of people converted that day. So that must have been quite some party with all those people coming to Christ and worshipping him. What a sight it must have been. So I pray that God convicts us all to live a more pious life and raise up men and women of God who would change cities with the gospel, just like Anthony did. So that's the end of today's chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot going on in this one, I suppose. But I think tomorrow I know, 2 more days of Anthony left. So we'll wrap up with his life soon. I hope you're enjoying his biography, and read the book if you want it to see it yourself, or get the companion book with the text in. All the links are below to where you can buy the books, or just like, subscribe, share this video, all the usual social media bits, and I shall see you tomorrow. Oh no, yeah, bye.